Welcome back to the Flow Performance Podcast. My name is Ricky Dan, founder of Flow Nutrition and your host. On today's episode, we chat with one of my biggest business and entrepreneurial inspirations, the founder of Anti-Ordinary, Rob Joseph. Now, this chat, without a doubt, is one of my favorites so far. Rob has one of the most inspiring stories, and I am genuinely honored that I'm able to share it with you all. Rob is the founder of Anti-Ordinary, and if you're not familiar with the brand, they are a brain protection company that have innovated and essentially invented the world's first beanie helmet. Yep, that's right, a beanie helmet. It is freaking epic. At the moment, they are mostly for on the slopes and at the snow. So if you're a skier or a snowboarder, I'd definitely recommend checking out their website at antiordinary.com, or at least checking out their Instagram or some of their YouTube videos just to see how cool this tech really is. Outside of the business, Rob is a fellow flow state junkie who has a passion for everything action and adventure, particularly motocross, downhill BMX, wakeboarding, and snowboarding. Most importantly, though, he is genuinely one of the best blokes you will ever meet, and I feel so lucky to call him a mate. In this episode, we dive into Rob's relationship with flow state and action sports, his founder story with Anti-Ordinary, and how he went from an engineering student with no background or knowledge in business to the position he's in now, flying around the world, selling out of helmets, and literally shaking up the whole helmet and brain protection industry. We also discuss the highs and lows Rob has experienced as an entrepreneur and the lessons he's learned scaling and growing Anti-Ordinary to where it is today. To sum it up, his story is about curiosity, persistence, passion, and finding a way. It's stories like Rob's, which is literally why I wanted to start this podcast in the first place. This chat is incredibly valuable for anyone interested in personal development, entrepreneurship, or simply anyone that wants to be truly inspired by a regular Aussie bloke from Brissy who is taking on the world and saving lives in the process. Whenever I catch up with Rob, I always leave feeling so pumped and optimistic for my own pursuits. Every time I see him, I literally just cannot wait to get home and start working even harder on my own business and to grow Flow Nutrition. His passion is contagious, and there is no doubt you're going to feel that during this chat. Lastly, just a reminder, if you find this episode valuable and want to support the podcast, don't hesitate to give it a 5-star rating, share it with a mate, or post it up on your Instagram story and tag the Flow Performance Podcast. Without further ado, we're going to dive into today's episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the chat with the founder of Anti-Ordinary, Rob Joseph. Today, I'm out at the Anti-Ordinary headquarters here in Brissy with the founder and the one and only Rob Joseph. Rob, how are we doing, mate?
Well, mate, how are you?
Very, very good. There is so much I'm keen to chat with you about today, so may as well dive straight into it. I wanted to start off with the theme of the podcast, which is obviously flow state, and I wanted to explore sort of your relationship with flow. So who is Rob Joseph and how does he experience flow state?
Yeah, so I'm Queensland boy, Southeast Queensland born and raised. Grew up, actually my first love was riding motorbikes, was the first thing. So got into that at an early age, and then just action sports all the way from there. Played a lot of traditional sports too, of course, but it was always the dangerous stuff that I really enjoyed. And as a teenager got into wakeboarding quite a lot, used to compete at a cable. And then later in life sort of came to being part of Anti-Ordinary. We make snowboarding and skiing helmets that are beanies. And so I guess as an action sports kid, I've always craved that flow state, I suppose, and its importance. And I've always had a brain that runs pretty quick. You know, I've always got a lot of things bouncing around, good or bad. And I've always found, particularly dirt bikes early on, is that, you know, when you're dodging trees at 80 kilometres an hour, there's really not much space for other thoughts. And I think that's when I feel the most calm and relaxed, is that like at that pace, be on a snowboard or a wakeboard or whatever it is, if the only thought is survive, get through this, then it's the most relaxing. which is a really odd feeling. It's a bit of a dichotomy, but I think that's what it is to me.
Well, that's what everyone reports in action and adventure sports. That's what creates or forces you into flow state, is that risk aspect where, like, I feel that in surfing, and it's why the reason I surf is for the barrel, because that's arguably like the most dangerous part. And if you're not in the moment, you're either going to eat shit or you'll have the best time of your life. And I think that's to me what action sports sort of brings out and how it brings out flow state. What sort of motorbike stuff?
So early days was motocross, and then had a couple of pretty big crashes. It was never very good.
Motocross, is that around the track?
Yeah, around the track with the jumps and everything. Did that. Never got to the stage of racing. Had a few pretty big incidents, and mum sort of put an end to that. And then became a bush kid. So running trail rides, enduro, that kind of thing was sort of where I ended up. And it was so I do a little bit more motocross now, but it's definitely pretty handy in the bush, pretty quick. And that's just where my autonomy is. Is it like I'm not thinking about anything at that stage? Is that, before you have a chance to think about doing the thing, you're already doing the thing, and that's the safest way to be.
Yeah. I've got a couple of mates that do downhill BMX, and they say exactly the same thing. Yeah. It's just that the way they described it was they can almost predict the future. Like, they know where every turn is, and they're not thinking about what they're doing in the moment. It's like they know 3 turns ahead where they're going to be and the movement and the body movement they need to be doing. And it's a really interesting thing to listen to people describe, like, what flow state is to them, because some people say their brains are super active and some people say their brains are switched off. And so it sounds like yours is more switched off in flow state in action sports, but then maybe in day-to-day life a bit more switched on and like going round and round.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things, like, particularly in dirt bikes, but I ride a lot of downhill mountain bikes as well. Yeah. And it is, when you're going slow, your wheel falls into every little rut, every little drop, whatever it is. And when you're looking at it, you look where you go. So if you look at all the big rocks that are super scary, you're likely to go straight towards them. But once you get to a certain level of like trusting your ability and you're autonomous, just jump over the top of them. And the faster you go, you lift the front wheel and the rear wheel just skims through and you don't even notice it's there. Whereas if you went 30% slower, it would be a huge issue. Yeah. But if you're going quick, just go straight over the top and it's not an issue. And that's a big thing in a lot of these action sports, is the harder you commit, the easier it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's amazing. I don't have any experience in motocross or even like wakeboarding stuff. And so with the helmets though, that sort of has been derived from snowboarding. So when did you sort of start snowboarding and how did that become introduced, being a Queensland Brissy boy?
Yeah, well, I would have been 17 the first time I snowboarded. It would have been the school ski trip. And by that stage, I was a pretty advanced wakeboarder. And being a cable wakeboarder, we wear helmets because there's rails and jumps and that kind of thing. And I had a helmet that I used to compete in, the nationals and that kind of thing. And the way the helmets, the anti-ordinary, came about was I took that helmet that I wore every single day riding wakeboards, in comps, everything, to the snow, and just hated the thing. I'd never had a problem with it ever before. It's from a reputable brand, pretty good helmet. Took it to the snow and just got so frustrated with the thing, I took it off. And then I had a huge crash, like, New Zealand. I went to Coronet Peak. It was a windy, icy day, and it hurt. And it was a big incident. And I realised it was dumb not to wear a helmet, but also realised nobody really wants to wear one. And you look around in New Zealand and Australia in particular, like, we don't wear helmets a lot. And it's like, well, why is it even a choice? So these days, you drive a car, you put your seatbelt on. There's no question. Why are we still questioning putting helmets on? Because I would say, like, I'm much more likely to fall off a snowboard than I am to crash a car. But for some reason, helmets were just so jarring that people were still choosing choosing to risk their lives.
Yeah. Well, mate, I can relate so much to that because I hate to admit it, but I hate wearing a helmet. I haven't worn yours yet, so that hopefully is about to change. But to be honest, I only wear one when I'm doing jumps or when I'm in the park. For some reason, when I'm just free skiing or snowboarding, on regular terrain, I always wear a beanie. I know I should be wearing a helmet. And in my head, it's more like, if I'm going to hurt myself, it'll be on a big jump or on a box or a rail. But I think we spoke about New Zealand. I was over there a little while ago. And my one big crash was when I was just free riding. It wasn't, I was going on the XL line at Cadrona, I was doing the park, I was on boxes and rails and didn't fall at all. And my fall was on the most mellow terrain, was unexpected. I was lucky I didn't hit my head because I didn't have a helmet on. But, fractured 2 ribs. But so kind of lucky.
Yeah.
But it's a crazy mentality because I know I should be wearing it, but I just hate how it's sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but it feels like you're not experiencing the full environment that's around you. It's like you're just condensed into your own little helmet, and you're so restricted to all the outside elements, like the sounds and the feelings. And I don't know, I just don't like how it restricts me.
Yeah, I mean, you just described the entire thing. The entire product, the reason why we built it is that, like riding dirt bikes, wearing a full face helmet, it's quite restrictive, but you don't feel restricted on a dirt bike wearing a full face helmet. And often riding bikes
I've never
is the same.
experienced that, so
but then you get to the snow, and the entire thing is about being free and being on the mountain and experiencing all of it. And there's something about that helmet experience that just doesn't align with that feeling. And like I'm incidentally very anti-safety equipment for the most part. Like I ride a motorbike to and from work. It's not far, but in a shirt and shorts and shoes, and I'm wearing a helmet and glasses. Like when I'm riding dirt bikes, I'm not wearing long sleeve dirt bike jerseys. I'm wearing t-shirts because a lot of the time I just don't see the benefit. But of course, helmets have such a big benefit, but unfortunately, they can really detract from the experience. And that's sort of a lot of what the design elements of our helmet comes from, is like, how do we eliminate that lack of freedom that you feel inside of a helmet?
Absolutely. And I think I'm your perfect customer, because all the things you've explained there, I can just relate so much. And I think it's also because my background is mostly in surfing, and surfing, like, I wear nothing but board shorts.
Yeah.
There is nothing else restricting you from you and the ocean, especially headwear. Like, headwear is becoming a little bit more prevalent in big wave surfing, especially reef breaks. Like, we've found that in Chopu. So all the women wear helmets at Chopu and Pipeline. Some of the men now are starting to do it. But it's, I don't know, I think because I've been brought up surfing, having no safety equipment at all, and then going into snowboarding where I'm like, it's pretty similar to surfing, but why do I need a helmet? It's ice, it's water, it's snow. Like, so yeah, mate, I freaking love the idea. Can we dive a bit more into that? So, Anti-Ordinary, you've come up with this idea. Lots of people have really good ideas, but very few people take that action to actually bring that into fruition. So I have so much respect for people that actually get past that first stage of, this would be sick. What were those very first initial steps or action that you had to take before you started, essentially?
Yeah, it was a big one. So I sort of had the idea on a university ski trip. It would have been 2016, so July 2016 pretty much. Sat on the idea for a couple of months, and then just sort of got more and more keen about it. And I was doing medical engineering at the university at the time, so sort of started really researching and going, is this possible? Is this possible? And once I sort of convinced myself in my own mind that it's like, yes, this could happen. So, okay, great. And like from an engineering perspective, like I believe nearly anything's possible. You can build just about anything you like with enough, we put people on the moon, we can build a better helmet, we can figure that out. And so it's a kind of Elon Musk thing. It's like, we'll figure it out, we'll do it, it's okay. But the important part of, I guess, a lot of business is you got to run a business behind it. Like it would have cost most companies, $3 or $4 million to build what we've built now. And to be able to put that case forward to go, hey, we need money to do this, you need to go, okay, this is going to make an investor money on the way out. And so a lot of the learning wasn't necessarily from an engineering design perspective. A lot of the learning early on was, how do we run a business? How do we wrap a business around saving people's lives that allows us to do it at the most efficiency? And that was, early days. We sort of came together and had a business partner at the time, sort of brought him on right at the start. And we just started learning. We started going to all the events, like in Brisbane, there was a lot of startup events at the time, meeting the people, networking, getting advisors, mentors, that kind of thing, and just started stepping through it. From there, we did a bunch of pitch competitions, won a little bit of money, and put the money down on our first patent. And then from that first patent, we then spent a little bit of money getting some 3D renders and doing some imagery and that kind of thing, and just building this business case. And then I went on a Kentucky trip with my girlfriend at the time, because we knew this is the last time. There's going to be struggle for a number of years. Yep. This is the last time I'm going to have some freedom. Went and then met an investor. He's a director, one of our really good mates, Matt. Met him on a train in Austria that had broken down. And he became our first investor probably 6 months after that. A couple more followed. And just wound the throttle on from there.
That's amazing. Can we just dive into more of the actual helmet itself, or beanie helmet? We've been throwing those two words around so far. Can you just paint a picture to the people listening, they can't see all the beanie helmets currently in this room. What actually have you created? Is it a beanie or a helmet?
Well, that's the thing. It's something different to both. You know, so the whole design thing was we wanted to, if you weren't going to wear a helmet, you'd wear a beanie, just like you do. You know, you want to be warm, you want to be comfortable, so a beanie is what you do. But the problem with the beanie is it's not safe. So the whole point was, instead of trying to make helmets more comfortable, why don't we make beanies more safe? And that was the design element we came from. So it's effectively, so it uses some traditional but mostly non-traditional helmet materials in a way that's incredibly non-traditional. Like, we've got 2 patents on the design. The whole thing is made up of about 85 different parts. And the point of that is so it flexes, it moves, and so when it goes on your head, it stretches around your head like the way a beanie would. And it sits lower on the head, there's a lower center of gravity, so when it sits on your head, it doesn't feel like a helmet, it feels much more like a beanie, with a bit of mass to it, of course. But it also maintains those safety elements of a helmet, in that, you know, you hit the ground, it's going to protect you, it's not going to blow apart. And, you know, we just got certification yesterday, international certification yesterday, and the drop test results have the best safety rating that we've seen from any helmet anywhere in the world, in our category, in cycle as well. So not only does it, you know, go on your head and fits really well and that kind of thing, it's also protecting your brain really, really well. And that was a critical part of both, just trying to marry those fit, feel, comfort look, but safety at the same time.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Can I just, yes, probably the first question is, you know, I'd be even surprised if a big dog like Oakley, with their capital, with their potential they could invest, if they even came out with something like this, I'd be like, damn, like, that's pretty cool. But how have you guys done that as a small startup in frickin' Brissy? How have you innovated all of that on your own?
Yeah, with great difficulty, I think is probably the answer. It's one of those ones where it was almost better, and not in all cases, but it was almost better we were isolated from the industry all the way here in Brisbane, because when you speak to people in the industry, they go, no, you can't do it that way. You go, okay, why not? They go, because that's not the way we do things. Go, okay, cool. What if we would do it a different way? And so from all the way over here in Brisbane, we sort of got this sort of fettered look at what did we want it to be, not what would the industry like, or what's the way it's always been done. So we just sort of started off with that, and with the design tenets that we wanted. You know, we wrote on the big whiteboard, like, what's the important things for this, and what design elements do we need to make the business work as well. And we just started with that and just sort of chipped away. And you know, getting capital was really tough. Getting in the industry was really tough. Getting customers was really tough from here in Brisbane, but it made us work harder. And because we've worked so hard for that knowledge and so hard for that design over 6 years, it's been forever. We now know it back to front. You know, we've had nothing given to us and take nothing for granted in that regard, but it means we have to know it back to front. We have to know everything. We have to know every part of the design, every cost, every, you know, manufacturing line, every customer, every channel, every competitor, partner, everything. And we've had to do all that because we've had to, not because someone goes, oh, these guys are competitors, go do that. And so while it's been really hard to be isolated, sometimes that isolation's really helped in that regard. And then it's just chipping things off. It's like, okay, we need to design a helmet. Great. Just one thing. Okay, that one doesn't work, so we'll change that answer. But then that ruins everything else. Okay, so go back to the start again and try again. And it's just really iterative, takes forever. And COVID didn't help, of course, as well. Yeah.
So where do you start? Because you don't have a template, you don't have a guide, you don't have something to go back to and say, this is what Oakley have done, or this is what a big brand has done. Like, where do you start in that whole process? I know you've got an engineering background. Yeah. Has that helped quite a lot?
Yes and no. So engineering, while it's a wonderful degree, it's a way of thinking.
I like that.
So, and business is a lot the same. It is, we have a number of assumptions, we want to get to an output. Let's start testing assumptions. And so the first thing is you look at what everyone else is doing. And okay, so they're all cool. Now we know everything about what they do. And then figure out why they don't do what we're trying to do. Yep. And that's an important part of the process, because you go, well, sure, they have the capability of doing this. They've got the capability, more capability than us, 100-fold, plus money, plus resources, plus people way smarter than us. But why don't they do it? And for us, we found out it was actually a business model thing. So great, there's not actually a design issue here. And so what you just start doing is start with what they have and go, okay, so how can we adapt that to do what we need? And then we start building through that. And then, so every time you go, okay, so how can we innovate here? How can we innovate here? Is it important to innovate here? It's like, okay, like with the chin straps of the helmet, we went through this big design process. Like, how do we change chin straps? Okay, wait, do we have to? Chin straps work. They go, great. No, we don't. So let's just tick that one off, steal that from other designs, chuck it in. But what do we need to innovate on? And you focus on those things, and then you combine them all, and hopefully it works.
Damn, I like that. I like that. It's just a really critical thinking way to approach it. And it's funny you say your engineering degree, you don't, it's not about the engineering, it's about the way of thinking. That's what I explain to people with PhDs as well. It has nothing to do with the actual research that you're conducting. The main lessons are in your ability to critically think and analyze and synthesize literature and understand it. And that's really cool because I never would have guessed that. I just thought engineering degrees were like, here's your freaking maths, you're a
nerd now, go nuts.
Yeah. So no, that's really cool. And so let's say you've got a massive whiteboard of all these things you've just spoken about. You need to make this thing now, right? Where do you go from there? Like as we've just discussed earlier, I've started having some more involvement with manufacturers for our own products, our nutritional bars, which are coming out very soon. Just a little plug.
Can't wait.
Same. It's been a while. How do you go? Like, nutritional bars exist, so I haven't had an issue emailing these guys going, "This is what we want." Where do you start with? Is it an email saying, "Hey, helmet manufacturer, this is what we want to do"? How do you go about that, and what did you sort of do?
Yeah, so ours was super convoluted. So we used a design team here in Brisbane who were excellent, really, really good. And then we got to a stage of looking for factories. And we were left with a choice from here in Australia is, do we want to manufacture in Australia? The answer was yes. We tried really, really hard to build here. I was like, okay, great. Who can manufacture it for us? And because we largely use plastics and foams, they're all moldable things, we can do all that here. But it was a question of the manufacturers here didn't know how to build a helmet. They don't have drop testing rigs. They've never really done this before. So we could spec them a number of things, but there'd be a lot of question marks in it all coming together.
Just out of curiosity, are there any normal regular helmets made here in Australia, or is that all a US thing?
Not to my knowledge. There's a couple of manufacturers in America, a couple in Europe, like Bolle do it in Germany, I'm pretty sure. But for the most part, it's the same 4 factories in China.
Yeah.
In Guangdong, all of them. They all make, like, we've been to the factory the first time. And we gave them the designs, like, hey, guys, do you want it? Like, can you build this for us? And they go, that looks like a lot of effort. How about you have this helmet that's a competitor's from 2 years ago, we'll chuck your name on it. Go, no, that's not the point here. We're not trying to be an Alibaba brand. We're not trying to be like everyone else. We're trying to genuinely make change.
Yeah.
And that's part of the process as well, is you got to find these manufacturers. And lucky for us, it's concentrated. So we worked with a team in Australia. We tried to work through some manufacturers, didn't quite work. Then we got put onto a group in China. It was a bunch of Englishmen who worked in China, R&D engineers. We worked with them for a little while. Then sort of COVID hit and they bailed really fast, which shook us to our core because we were like, we hadn't really paid you yet. Like, why are you leaving? And they go, oh, look, something's happening. We've got to go, but we've left you with Jack, who's a factory rep. Yeah. And they're like, but he's the best factory rep we've ever met. And we're like, okay, hope so. Because this is like the week before COVID hits. Like, this is like all crazy. And it all made sense once COVID hit because they just knew before we did because they were in China. But yeah, now we deal with a guy called Jack who's worked with some of the big brands for decades. And he liaises with the factories for us. So he's kind of like our middleman in between. And he's been great. So because we chose to deal with helmet manufacturers, they have all the engineers on hand. They have testing rigs. They have all this stuff. And they've got all the knowledge of every helmet they've built for the last decades, and their supply chain is really strong because of that. And so we did have to change our design quite a lot to suit what they could build, because we brought something that was like totally new, totally innovative, and we go, hey guys, build this, and they go, nah, we can't. We don't have access to materials. It's going to change our processes too much, and these guys are bumping out 400,000 helmets a month, and so we're trying to build 1,000, and they go, look, boys, you're just not worth the effort. And so we go, okay, great, we're going to have to sort of mold into what you guys need. And that was like a second design phase after that. It was a huge learning for us. And an advice I'd give to anyone is like, figure out who you want to build it first, then design around what they can do. Because like they de-risked us so aggressively by using these really good manufacturers who build everybody else's helmets, supply chains, everything, and they had the knowledge. But they just were unwilling to bend to what we needed to do. So we did a huge design change, and that was fine. It's come out better now because of it, which is excellent. But that was a big time period for us.
Bloody hell. As you were just talking about that, I just finished Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog.
Great book.
And I was just thinking, dude, this sounds exactly the same. Literally, like all those stories of him heading over to Japan.
Yeah.
But it just sounds nuts. Like here I am thinking it's difficult talking with my first manufacturers were in Burleigh.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh, I've got a 10-minute drive to manufacturers in Burleigh to chat with them about it. This is a whole new ball game. Like you're talking different time zone, different freaking language. Like There must be so many challenges involved with that.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, Jack's really good. He speaks great English. He's
Okay, so
he's been
he's
really
your
good to us.
middleman.
He's our guy, and he's just
Yeah.
like the luckiest factory rep anywhere. Like the R&D guys in China were like, we're leaving with Jack. He's better than we are. Like he's great, and not often does a supplier tell you that. But yeah, he was just a G. Always looks after us. But yeah, it's tough. You know, like COVID was really hard for that because had we been manufacturing down the road, we could have jumped in a car and fixed it. But because we were doing like some really heavy, it was like the last 10% of design where everything starts sort of like everything works. Okay, the last 10% of stuff that fail. So you need to fix that. Okay, so that thing we fixed, the next thing broke. The next thing broke. But the thing, normally you'd go to China, you'd sit on the factory floor, you'd make a change. It'd be like a 2-hour turnaround. You go, great, fix, let's move on. But because we couldn't do that, so we'd test something, it would break. It'd get sent to us. They'd take photos, they'd send it to us, week turnaround, 2 weeks turnaround because of COVID. We'd look at it, go, okay, great, let's change this, this, and this, send it back to them. They make the changes, they test it again, and hopefully it doesn't break. So suddenly what would have been a 2-day turnaround on a change ends up being a month. And it's the middle of COVID. So it's like that really hurt us that we couldn't just like fly down the road, get on the machines ourselves and start doing stuff. But in the same way, like we tried our best, like I was saying before, like we could get tooled samples back from China faster than we could get an email back from someone in Australia. And so like we tried so hard here. Like we had money.
I understand.
Feeling the same thing, man. Yeah, like it's really tough. And like it's just the way that it is at the moment. And you got to find the people who are good, but there's pros and cons of local versus non-local, and they just got to stack them up against each other.
Damn. So you're making some pretty big business moves as we're talking there. Like there's some pretty big things. How do you go from not just studying engineering, but how do you go studying engineering with no business experience prior to that?
None.
Nothing?
I think mum and dad ran a business.
Okay.
You know, like an engineering business, so I wasn't really involved.
And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, like there's a big difference between having an idea as you're a uni student and going, oh yeah, boys, this would be sick. But then there's taking action, flying to bloody China and doing things. Like, I'm super curious to know, like, how you went from simply just studying engineering to making all these big business moves. Like, how did you go with the transition from your studies and your work to your business? How did that like initial time frame look like back before COVID?
Yeah, right. So we were, 2016 had the idea, 2017 started the company. And then, so started really cracking away at it while still studying, I was just working in Dream. It was just a casual job. Did that for about 12 months, just before Christmas. And then that Kentucky trip, I quit my job. And like, okay, we're going to go at ante now. Had a little bit of money saved, but you know, like, it was like 3 or 4 grand, pretty much, you know. But I was a kid, like I was living at home. I was 20 or something, like it was fine. But yeah, like a lot of it is like, interestingly, it's a lot like action sports. It's like just this cascading risk. Is that like, you're a surfer, dudes out doing aerials, or even like you running the XL Park at Kadrona. Like I look at that and go, that's nuts. Because I can't really ride park that well. I would love to.
I don't ride it well.
Yeah, well, you do it. And it's a huge gap. And there's consequences to that.
Yeah.
But to you kind of like, oh, just pin it and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And so like a lot like action sports is a lot like business where you just take these little steps and then you get to a stage where people go, whoa, how are you doing that? And you go, well, no, it was 3 years of little steps. And, quitting the job was a big thing, but also I was like, I was 20, I was pretty employable. I could run on the smell of an oily rag. Like the risk wasn't that high. And then you start running out of money, but you got to be in it to win it. So I'm always of the opinion, like there can't be a plan B. You have to be full throttle, burn all the boats. Because if you have a plan B, you'll step back from it. And so like, that's that, you quit your job and then you just work full time at it. And the harder you work at it, the more lucky you get with the people you meet and all that kind of thing. And so it just sort of like, it's hard to explain it, but you just like wake up every morning and do the thing and take every chance you can, every risk you can, because eventually it'll just start like all building a picture. And then you end up, like I've moved overseas with 4 days notice and all that kind of thing. Like that seems wild, but like after 6 years of taking tiny little steps, that risk doesn't seem so bad because the outcome of it goes sick. Like that's worth it. So you just got to do it.
No, it's like that's exactly what I needed to hear right now. That is amazing, and it's such a common theme that going all in. And I don't know if you know a guy called Nick Bear.
Yeah, I've heard
He's
the name.
an American guy, has a big business, Bear Performance Nutrition.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a hybrid athlete. He's a big role model of mine, not for his physical stuff, but his business stuff. He documents everything online on YouTube, and his thing is going all in on life and every choice you make. And because I don't think I've ever half-assed anything in my life. Like, I either go all in or I don't touch it.
Yeah.
And I've even met like LSKD,
Jason Daniel?
Jason Daniel. Like I met
Cool
him on
guy.
a run one day.
Cool guy.
And the one thing that I learned from him, he was like, mate, I was working, I think it was like a chippy or something for 10 years while LSKD was like just his second thing. And he said, mate, once I quit that and went all in, things just took off. And it's such a common theme once you've made that leap. But I feel like it's just a thing that, I don't know, like I understand that some people aren't in a position where they may not be able to not look after themselves, but they wouldn't be able to like financially, what am I trying to say?
Yeah. Like they're not in a position to quit at all because they've got kids or a mortgage or something and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. How did you go about because obviously it was a grind for those years.
Yeah, man.
How did you get through that? Like it would have been tough.
Oh, for sure. Like 4 months ago, and like we're sitting in the office right now. 4 months ago, I was pouring concrete on a job site, and that was after going to America twice, selling out twice, doing insane amounts, like raising money, all this kind of stuff. We're at series, we're at seed round. We've raised over $1 million, and I'm still pouring concrete. And there's a lot of things people are like, oh, I can't do that. It's like you probably can, in fairness, but you just got to want it enough. And if you don't want it enough, that's fine. But, if you've got kids and a house and that kind of thing, it's a little bit different. And, I was lucky I was 20, so I didn't have much rolling mass. But also I'm 27 now and don't have much other than, I don't really own much. All my friends have jobs. A lot of them getting married. Like, I don't have that. Yeah. But I have this. Yeah. And it's like, well, I was willing to give all that up for this, and I think that's one of those things. But, like Jason Daniel's a great example. Like a Southeast Queensland boy, motocross guy. Same with Peter Hull from Fitstop. They're all, motocross kids. And like the translation of action sports to entrepreneurship is really interesting. Because again, like the motocross guys, they're doing 120-foot jumps. To most regular, sane people, that is insane. But when you go from a 90-footer to a 100-footer to a 120-footer, you're kind of like, it's not such a big deal. And so, that's why I think there's such this propensity for business amongst the action sports community, because we understand this, like, commit hard. Like, do all your research, think about it, be diligent. But when the time comes just to, like, wind the throttle on or, like, pin it down the mountain, do that. And nothing else can be in your brain at that exact point. Because that's all. And it's better to overcommit than undercommit. Like you jump in the XL park. If you're knuckling, your knees are in strife. But if you go 10 foot longer, you're still on the down ramp. So go long.
I've never thought of those parallels between action sports and entrepreneurship. I've definitely seen it in the ultra space, ultra marathon runners, Ironman. Like a lot of those events, I swear every second person either owned a business, they're an entrepreneur, they're a millionaire or billionaire from something. And I really understand that connection because to me, like, I've ran some ultras before and
you're not bag.
But like, and I've got very little experience in business, but I can already see the parallels with like the feelings, the emotions, the shit you go through in an ultra marathon is so similar to business. And it's just the people that like hold on, find a way, they sort of accept that shit's going to happen, and it's not about, oh no, this has happened. It's just straight away, what are we going to do to troubleshoot that?
Yeah.
I think that's the mindset that like the ultra community are really good at, and that's probably why they're so good at business as well.
Yeah.
But I've never thought of the action sports stuff with just pure risk taking.
But it's everything, like it's just like with the ultra guys, it's just, I remember we were having a particularly dark time and there was no money left. And I think my co-founder had left and that kind of thing. And I was talking to mum, like pretty emotional on the phone. And I was like, oh, look, I just don't know how we can keep going. And she was like, why wouldn't you keep going? I was like, oh, there's no money. And she goes, money isn't required for you to keep going. Like you can find money, you can go work, that's fine. But why does a company have to stop? And I was like, oh. And she's like, the company only stops when you tell it to stop. So even if you've got no money, if you're not saying, hey, we're done, we're not done. And that was very poignant for me because mum's a business owner, has mum and dad own a business together. And it's just like, sure, there's no money, but like, why would that stop you?
That's incredible to have that sort of support coming from.
Oh, I have the best parents in the world. I just, like, a lot of luck is what you're born into. After that, a lot of it's up to you, But I'm so lucky to have the parents I have. Like, just incredible. Couldn't do it without them. It's just silly. Like I can imagine it would be stressful for them to see the kind of shit that I get up to. But there's always like, no, go do it. Like, go But,
Yeah, mate, I think your mum needs to meet my mum, because I think she's gone through the exact same thing with a brother as a pro golfer that's still trying to really make it. And I was having this chat with my brother the other day about especially successful sports people. They are just simply the ones that don't give up.
Yeah,
he's 30 now, and there's this mindset around like, okay, he thought he'd be in a different position when he gets to 30, he'd be on a different tour or something.
Yeah,
but it's just like, find a way. Like my mum, once again, I think she's the best mum in the world. But
mums can fight over that one.
But yes, same thing. Like, she's just like, while you have the support of us, like, just keep going and don't stop. Like, that's
a lot of us. Do you die? Like, I like that. I know it's a little bit like hoity-toity and in the ether, but like, do you die? Does anyone die? No. Okay, I'll give it a go. Like, where's the negative outcome? Like, you might lose some stuff, great, but you might also win a lot of stuff. And if you're scared of losing stuff the entire time, or whatever it is, or losing time, you'll never do anything good. Because if you're scared of that the entire time, then you'll never put a step forward. But that's not what the point is.
I'm a big fan of, have you heard, I think it was Tim Ferriss, he had fear setting. He did a TED talk on, instead of goal setting, it was fear setting. Basically, he just said, write down like every possible thing that could go wrong, like even worst case scenario, and then write some sort of contingency plan to get you back to the status quo. And he just said, once you come to the realization that A, you're probably not going to die, B, you probably won't be homeless, and you'll be able to find a way back.
Yeah,
that can often be like the thing that helps you take that leap, because you're right. It's often we glamorize the bad side to it and go, oh no, we're going to lose all this money, all this time. But it's like, just give it a crack.
You can't be scared of that. You can't be scared of that, because like, unless you're willing to risk something, you won't win anything. And like, I'll have to go watch that, because it's a very good point. And a lot of it's just risk. If you're willing to risk more than everyone else is, that's the only way you're going to do better than everyone else does. Same with work. So.
Mate, that's epic. I am cautious of time. I really want to touch on these helmets.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where to start with these. So we've given the listeners a bit of an explanation of what they look like and feel like.
Yep.
So it's a beanie helmet.
Yep.
So on the outside, if you were seeing someone snowboard past you, you wouldn't be able to tell if they're wearing a beanie or a helmet. It looks like a beanie, right?
Nah, yeah.
What's underneath that nice looking beanie? Like, what are the different components of it? And what sort of makes it as safe as it is?
Yeah, so it is in somewhat ways a helmet. Like, it'll look like a helmet in a bunch of segments. From the outside, there's a plastic shell. We've got 2 carbon strips that run over sort of the top center, and they provide some tension. They're a tension member, effectively. But effectively, like the outer frame is in like 9 or 10 parts, with a bunch of things underneath that you won't see. On the inside, we've got a non-Newtonian foam set into a regular EPS helmet foam. So on the inside, it seems a bit that way, but we don't run any soft foam like traditional helmets do. We've got no adjusters. There's nothing. Like, when you look in the bottom of the helmet, all you see is foam. And because in traditional helmets, those adjusters, those bits of foam, they're to make a helmet feel like it fits. Whereas we go, no, we want the frame to fit. So that's why we built it dynamic in such a way that it just clamps onto your head. And so we've had people, like, it's like 550 grams. We've had guys go and be like, oh, it's super light.
What's a regular helmet?
It can be anywhere from like 200 to 650. So we're kind of on the upper end. We went testing in New Zealand a few weeks ago. Every rider who put it on goes, oh, that's really light. Actually, it's not. But the center of gravity is lower, so it fits your head better and you don't feel the weight like you would a traditional helmet. So it bends the rules of what traditional helmets do a lot of the time. And it sits lower, so it's got a silicon cradle that runs around the perimeter of the head, and it sits underneath it's called an occipital bump. If you touch the back of your head, where your spine goes into the back of your skull, there's a bump. And if you wear hats or beanies, that's where you'd put them. But traditional helmets can't put protection mechanism down there, because if you roll your head back too hard, it can really impede on the neck movement. So what we do is we built this neck pad, this neck cup. So the entire helmet comes up and it pulls in around the back of your head. And so it does it in such a safe manner, but also it fits away around your head like a hat would or a beanie would, where it's around the head, not like a helmet that goes on top of the head. So the entire feeling is different. And it's a really lovely thing. It feels much nicer. Over the years, we have nothing solid. Because one of my big bugbears with helmets is like when they've got those ear pads. So you're trying to keep your ears warm, but they rub on your ears, or you can't run earphones or whatever it is. So what we do is our inner is just straight merino, which does the lovely, like, keeps you warm when you're cool, keeps you cool when you're warm. So your ear pads are just merino. So if you get cold ears, just pull it down over the top, and suddenly you're totally protected from the elements, but you can still hear everything around you. And we found, like, when we were doing some testing, that audiology, being able to hear everything around you, is actually one of the really big parts of feeling free. It's like being able to see everything, but being able to hear everything. And when something goes down over your ears and it blocks your hearing, you feel like you're in a fishbowl.
Well, that's what I was trying to explain before.
Yeah, it's one of the sensory things that make you feel locked in to that helmet. But so all we do is just put some merino on the outside, so your ears are still warm, still covered, but you can still hear everything around you in full 3D, like 360 degrees. And not only is that safer, but it feels so much nicer.
Yeah. Well, as a snowboarder, if I'm going to go buy a helmet, I much prefer the feel over the safety. I don't think I've ever even looked at the safety
Nobody ever does.
rating.
Nobody ever does.
Just curious. I'm sure there's people listening that want me to ask this question, but is there a big difference? Is there really safe helmets and really shit helmets?
There is.
Because I just assume if they're in a shop, they have been tested, they should be safe. Is that a thing first?
Yes, but safe is a scale. Right, we do our ANCAP safety ratings with cars, and there's like 5 stars and there's 1 star. 1 star, you can still sell the car. It still sits at like a minimum value of safety.
Yeah.
But you can still sell it. Whereas a 5 star is much better, but it's good. And so, but it's still all available. So in the snow sports world, this is the same as bike, same as moto, is we have minimum level requirements to get certifications. So our helmet does the European and the American certifications, which are the 2 big ones pretty much in snow. There's a couple more for bike, but they're all effectively the same. And when you pass that, you're legally a helmet. Wow. And in fact, you can actually sell helmets that aren't to that standard, because there was a company that was a few years ago as well. They go, oh, it's better than nothing, but it's not worse. And you can still sell those things. There's nothing stopping you from selling them.
Do they have to say anything on the packet, or they just...
No, they just don't put certified on there.
Because I've always even wondered, like, you go to Kmart and get yourself a $10 bike helmet. I've always thought, like, is that just a piece of shit? Like, is that going to do anything? Or
there's a study in the States. They tested like some $8 Target, like Spider-Man helmets.
Yeah.
Some of them tested better than like $400 really nice ones. So in helmets, what you pay for is brand, look, quality of build, and feeling. You don't pay for safety. Because if you paid for safety, there are some really expensive helmets that would be worth $20. And there's some really cheap, shitty looking ones that are really expensive. And so that was one of the things that actually drove me from an engineering perspective to do this. Because like the way that we think about safety, brain safety in particular, like there's guys with 3 boards, 3 sets of skis, 2 gloves, sets of goggles that are $400 each, whatever it is. And they'll run one helmet they bought 10 years ago. The thing is flogged. The thing has had it. But they'll just use that same helmet. It's like, well, no, that's not how brain safety works. And so like for us, the mantra was always like, we have to be competing to be the safest in the world. And the drop test results we get, we've never seen better than. But because no other helmet company releases their drop test data, I can't tell you. If I had 50 grand to buy 5 of every helmet on the market and go test it independently, I'd be able to tell you for sure. The closest we have is there's an insurance company in Sweden, I think, called Folksam, who in 2019 tested a bunch of ski helmets. The Oakley Mod 3 was the best, at like 23% better than the standard. Our results just now that we got in yesterday from the third-party certifier was up to 30% better. And so like we've got a reasonable idea to go, okay, there's no better helmet in terms of safety than ours, but we don't know that for sure. Because for some reason, and you can try and hypothesize why they do this, but nobody actually tells you how safe the helmet is. And that should be criminal.
But as a consumer myself, I've never actually even thought about it, and to be honest, even cared about it.
Yeah.
I walked into 5 ski shops in Queenstown, for example. I just love looking at snow kit. Love it. And I just straight away look for what looks the coolest. Something maybe a little slimline, and then I'll put it on and go, no, this still feels like shit. It makes me feel constrained, that whole fishbowl feeling we were talking about. Not once have I ever asked the person working there, is this safe? Or maybe which one is the safest? Which is scary because it sounds like that's the question that we maybe should be asking.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But we, like, for some reason, helmets got left behind. We just put one on. And like the Lime scooters around here, you just put a helmet on, they supply you. So what's the point? That thing's probably broken. It probably doesn't do anything for you. And like an ill-fitting helmet is just as bad as not having one at all. You see people cruising around and like there's just too much forehead showing. And it's like you're going to smack your face and it's going to be useless to you. And it's just like, and that's part of the driver because like it's going to hurt our friends. It's going to hurt someone. I'm sure it does every single day. These helmets just aren't as efficient as they should be. And nobody's pushing the standard in safety. Nobody who's taking the bull by the horns going, you know what, guys? It's almost like they had this big agreement to not try. And as long as we don't try, we just make the prettiest helmet, and whoever has the prettiest helmet sells the most. Yeah, that's the thing. It's all marketing. And there's a lot of gimmicks. Like you go through these websites and they've got all like these cool names for stuff, and it makes you feel safer when you buy it, but it doesn't make you safer. And they're making stuff up at this point. Like it's the marketing team got a hold of a helmet and go, okay, this is what we're going to do. Like I've been to the factory, like I've seen them get built, and I've been unimpressed. And it's just like, it's criminal, like anywhere else. And I wrote my engineering thesis on this, my final year thesis, on like, we need to score helmets
That is
better.
exactly what Phil Knight did with his
did he?
shoes.
Yeah, he might have been doing his MBA or something.
He wrote
Yeah.
a whole thesis just on his shoe design.
Maybe I read the book years ago. I was like modeling my life. I mean, not a bad guy to model your life after. But like, it's incredible because like in reality with helmets, we should have a number of them. Like if you're riding powder one day, so like the same reason, if I was teaching someone to ride a snowboard in Japan, in the soft snow going maybe 4 kilometers an hour, that's the same helmet that Scotty James or Val Gaselli wears 16 feet above the coping on a half pipe. And tell me how that works. Because like they're driving race cars, they should have a full cage setup. And I'm in bumper cars. You know, it's entirely different use cases. Kids wear the same helmets that adults do at different speeds, different weights, everything. So in reality, we should be going, well, this helmet's going to be really good for you if you're riding park because you're going to hit stuff really hard.
Are there currently better helmets for like park versus riding powder?
There would be.
You know, maybe helmets that respond better to hitting a pipe rather than snow or ice?
There is from a science perspective, but it is impossible to tell right now. There is no information in the world for any helmet that can tell you how good a helmet's going to be. And brain injuries are ambiguous, and that's part of the reason why, because you can fall 10 different ways in the same day and every single incident be different. Different people get hurt different ways, like all these kind of things. But the thing is, like if you're riding park, you need a helmet that, if you're hitting a rail or you're hitting ice on a jump, you should have a helmet that can withstand a huge amount of impact force on a concentrated area. If you're riding powder and you're more likely taking more hits but softer hits, you should have a helmet that's a bit more like a pillow in that it's cushioning for you. Whereas that helmet, like a pillow helmet that's for powder, will be useless to you if you're hitting a rail. Or not useless, but in that vicinity. The same way as like you wouldn't ride your park board in powder. And you wouldn't ride a powder board, at the XL jumps at Cardi's, like that's the way we should, in the end, that's the way we want to be thinking about helmets because that's going to save the most people, CTE, TBI, everything. That's going to be the best way forward. But right now, we're not even thinking about safety in helmets, so we've got to start there first.
Yeah, well, even just listening to you talk about that, once again, I think I'm your perfect customer.
Yeah.
Like, you've already sold a helmet. You can stop selling it, mate. But you've answered. So my view of business, right, is you're just solving problems for people.
Yeah.
You've already solved every problem that I've had with a helmet, right? Especially with the feel side of it, because I've tried these on and they feel amazing. But I think there needs to be some sort of education component around that safety rating.
So.
Because I've learnt so much in the last 10 minutes about bloody helmet safety and ratings. And so how can you combat that? Because that's going to sell you more helmets as well if people just simply know that.
Yeah.
How do you approach that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot there because I know it. We know it. It's science. We can do this, and we can put a whole web page up for people to learn. But there's got to be a willingness to learn, and there's got to be a trust element.
How do you make that cool?
Exactly, by building the coolest helmets.
Yeah,
you make the best helmet. People start thinking about it in a different way, and it's going to look a lot of it like we're taking aim at other manufacturers, which we aren't directly, but we are indirectly. Like if you make a shit helmet, we're coming for you. We're trying to expose you because that should make you better. And if you're doing better than us, great, but show it. Like, why aren't you telling us that you're doing 30% better than standard? And so that's part of it. A lot of it is trust as well. Because, like, I'm just a dude from Brisbane, Australia. Like, I'm not that good on a snowboard. Love it. It's my favorite thing in the world to do, but I'm not that good on a snowboard. So my legitimacy in the snow sports world is reasonably low. So at first, we have to make people trust the product does what it says it does. And then when they start liking us, start liking the brand, we can start going, hey, guys, did you know this? And we start building that piece up around it. Because like it's everywhere on, like, doesn't matter if it's in cycle industry, snow, bike, moto, it is just filled with people who do not know what they're talking about. And they post on social media, they post in forums, all that kind of stuff. And we've just got to start building that, hey, mate, that's wrong. I'm sorry to tell you that you're wrong, but you're wrong. I know this manufacturer told you this, or they inferred this to make you think this. This is not your fault, but this is actually how it works. And it's just this really slow process of like, we're going to supply the information every time. We're going to be really open. We're going to like open up our own results, because like that's the only way to do it, is by being transparent. And the only way to be like, being transparent makes everyone else question what everyone else is doing, because they're not being transparent. And so we have to be the change we want to see in the world in that, and just watch it build momentum. And then like the day that I can spend my entire day just talking about helmet safety and brain safety and saving lives is a really damn good day. So that's the dream, is to get there.
You've just also explained the nutrition world, especially in action and adventure sports.
Same thing. Yeah.
Like I love nutrition with a passion, but I am so glad I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian, because they just must hear some absolute heinous shit. Like clients coming in saying, I've heard this thing on Instagram, and because everyone eats, right? So everyone's got an opinion on that. And so it's almost, before you educate them, you have to undo all the crap they've heard through marketing and other brands and stuff. And it sounds like a very similar thing happening with helmets.
Yeah, and it like suits a lot of people with misinformation, you know? Like, Red Bull gives you wings. Dope. Just like, why are we having anything else? Like, why are we drinking water? It's just one of those things that just... And like, a lot of people just like, not misinform themselves, but like in nutrition and sports science, all that kind of thing, they go, oh, well, I did a bunch of squats this year and now my legs don't burn snowboarding, so I'm just going to keep squatting. So, brother, your hamstrings are cooked. Your knees are going to blow. And so, you know, it's one of these things that it's like it has to be a real tempered. You don't want to come in and tell them they're wrong. You go, hey, mate, I think you can do better this way. And it's tough.
Yeah.
But worthwhile.
Sure. Just on the education part, when I first heard about this, you mentioned non-Newtonium.
Yeah, Newtonian. Yeah.
Non-Newtonium fluid or material. When I first found out about that, I was just obsessed. I YouTubed all these videos on how you can make it at home. I told my mum, and she was like, oh, I want to make this for my year 3 kids. And like, can you just explain to the listeners what the helmet's actually made of? Because that's probably the biggest, would you say the biggest game-changing part of the helmet, or is it just one of the components? One
of the components too. Yeah. Originally, we were trying to build the whole helmet out of non-Newtonian materials. We realized that was nearly impossible. It would have made a really heavy helmet. But we still have components of it within the helmet now. So it's a really valuable material. We just couldn't build an entire helmet out of it. So non-Newtonian materials are anything that has a non-linear viscosity, pretty much. So starts off soft, turns hard when you hit it. It's like oobleck, that experiment you do at school. You know, it's just cornstarch and water. But just effectively, the molecules are really big in any of these things. And so when they're free to move across each other, but then when you impact it, they bind up because of the friction of the large molecules. And there's non-Newtonian materials that are shear thinning as well. So like I think tomato sauce and blood is shear thinning. So the more force you put on it, the lighter it gets.
Tomato sauce? Interesting.
But ours is shear thickening. So like it starts off reasonably soft. Then the harder you impact it, the harder it gets. And that allows us to, in part of our safety mechanism, is a dual stage liner. So effectively what it does is we use a regular foam. And the thing about sort of static foams is they're good at one really good impact. So they're designed for a particular impact, they're really good there. But the Newtonian ones are more dynamic than that. So we add 2 materials in, so we're good at a larger range of impacts rather than just the one where one material can be good at. And that's why we do it.
That's fascinating. So how have you you said you initially just tried to line the beanie.
Yeah.
How has that changed? So how many versions have you had of this beanie?
Oh, so we're at V2 of production.
V2, yep.
But I would say that we've probably been through like 200, 300 prototypes of different, probably more, in earnest, more.
And how have you distributed that material in this latest edition of the helmet? What does it sort of look like?
So effectively when you open up the inside of the unit, it's mostly black EPS foam, which is the expanded polystyrene. Mostly black, but it's got a bunch of little red dots in it. And what they are, they're the non-Newtonian pads. So they sit about 10 millimeters into the foam, and they sit sort of everywhere in the helmet and fit nice and close to the head. So I think there's probably about 20 or 21 units in there, I think. And that's how they sit. They make up probably a quarter of the total foam matrix of the helmet, the compression liner. And they do that in sort of strategic areas that allow it to perform the way it needs to.
Damn, that is so cool. And so that's just one of the main contributors to why you can mold it, you can shape it. It's such a, what's the word you described?
Dynamic is what we say.
Dynamic. Yeah. So even just like, I'm thinking if you're going to pack it in your suitcase, like it's just going to be so much easier to
Yeah.
take a helmet. Like I think of taking a helmet on a flight and I'd put it on the outside and it
Yeah.
smacks into everyone and everything. And,
Exactly.
But man, that is really freaking cool.
Yeah.
It makes me think back to when I was doing my masters at UQ. There was a lot of research going on in concussions at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about concussions and headwear, but I remember there was a lot of discussions around, like, if, as you were saying, if the headwear is not fitted properly, if it's loose on the head, it can actually amplify the concussion that can come from falls and stuff. Like, is that lower center of gravity in yours going to help that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you know much about that with your helmet? Have you tested it with that sort of stuff? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it just all comes down to those drop test results, like what we were talking about before, which is that straight safety, like the way it fits. Yeah, right. But in the real world, you want a helmet that fits. Yeah. And most helmets, bike helmets, snow helmets, they have got those adjusters at the back where you click up, and the soft foam too. And all that is designed to do is make it feel like it fits when it's on your head. A lot of time, like when you put a helmet on, you adjust the back thing, you can slip your fingers up between your head and your helmet. And that's air gap that just shouldn't be there. Yeah. It means the helmet doesn't fit. And so what you want is the protection mechanism to be as close to your head because there is as little room for something to go wrong. Because when you're hurtling towards the ground, you want that thing to stay on your head exactly the way it should be. And any degree of freedom within that is worse. And like from a swing weight perspective, the further a mass is away from the center of gravity of a thing, the more force it puts on. So if, say you've got 10 or 15 mil, that's much more swing weight than what the helmet should be. And the reason for that is because rigid helmets, everybody's head shape is different. You can be, so there's scientifically, there's three different, sort of not generic head shapes, but the origins of. So there's the Asian, the African, and the Caucasian. All three of them are different by nature. And everybody in the world has some mix of those. But every head shape is unique. We had a bunch of mates in here one time. We all had 56 centimeters heads, all vaguely Caucasian. Every helmet was different on every person, fit differently. So everybody's head shape is different. But when you design a helmet, a rigid helmet at least, you can only design it to that CAD head form that you have at the time. So unless you have that head shape perfect, which you won't.
Which never happens.
Exactly, it never happens.
Even just like with rental helmets. Like you go to a rental shop and they have all the exact same helmet and there's 1,000 different people walking through from different countries.
And they go, chuck it on.
It's just like, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just not how helmets work. And so when we built this one, I was like, it has to fit everybody perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's why the dynamic frame was important. The beanie thing was important. That it just, like you can buy it online. It shows up, it fits. That's the point.
Mate, I'm just bloody fascinated about this. And we can talk about this all day. I am very cautious of time. So where's next? Like, are we sticking in the snow sport space or, you've got experience in motocross and like bikes. Like, is there any scope for that sort of thing or where are we going from here?
Yeah, everything. We want to be the people that protect the brains the best anywhere in the world. And where we see it, there's a lot of medical industry as well. Kids with epilepsy, kids with autism, doctors are sending them to school with boxing helmets on. And like not only is it totally useless for the purpose, but the poor kids, and so we've got this wonderful opportunity to build something that's beautiful for them. We want to get to a point where the helmets are so cool that other kids want to wear it. Chuck your favorite footy team or Barbie or SpongeBob if kids are still watching SpongeBob. Put all those so that the helmet is so cool that kids want to wear it. Yeah. But of course, snow first. Snow is where our heart and our root is. But cycle as well, like a big mountain biker, getting into cycle because that's also a totally underserved market in terms of what we're doing. And moto from there, everything. We just want to be the best brain protection company in the world.
Oh, that is so exciting. When you were saying you need to make it cool, the only thing I can think of is when you see the Red Bull guys in the park, you see the Red Bull helmet and you're just chilling in the chairlift and you see them coming down, so you just sort of lock onto them and you're just thinking, what are they about to do?
They're going to bust a tan for sure.
You're going to have that soon, mate, with anti-helmets. You're going to see the little anti-logo and go,
that's the whole...
They know what's up.
Getting a Monster helmet or a Red Bull helmet on an athlete would just be the dream. I don't know, that's how you've netted a big fish in terms of athletes is like you get one of those guys on.
You're going to be sewing in Red Bull into those beanies, mate.
That's the beauty of it is they're totally customizable. Like whatever, we can work with whatever brand, whatever company, we'll get some flow ones in there. Yeah, so that's a really fun part of what we do.
Yeah. That's sick. And for those people who are just sitting there frothing, wishing they can get their hands on one, firstly, can they? Are you currently selling them? Are they available online, or where are we at with that sort of?
Not right now. So they're in production right now. In was it October, November? It's November now. They'll be finished production in the next couple of weeks. They'll be in America mid-December. America and Europe mid-December. Depending on when this podcast comes out, though, the ideal case is they'll all be sold out. But antiordinary.co is the best place to get them. So we're just selling them online. Get them if you want them, but it's a pretty limited release this year. So we'll probably sell out reasonably quickly. So if you want one, send me an email. But other than that, that's the way you get them.
That's fantastic, mate. Mate, you are honestly one of my biggest business inspirations. And whenever we have these chats, I just feel like I want to run home and just start working on my business and get it to the stage where you've got yours, because we're sitting here in your office and yeah, it's just a very inspiring environment, mate. So you should be so stoked with what you've created. And yeah, as Rob mentioned, if you guys want any more details, jump on the website, antiordinary.co.
That's it.
And your Instagram, what's your Instagram handle?
Antiordinary.co.
Oh, same thing?
Consistent.
Beautiful. Mate, I can't wait to get my hands on one day, and I know the listeners will be thinking the exact same thing. So, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again for the chat.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Legend. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Flow Performance Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the chat and found loads of value that you can use to fuel more flow state in your life. If you did enjoy the content and want to support the podcast, don't forget to give it a 5-star rating, leave a review, or even better, share it to a mate, post it up on your Instagram story and tag Flow Performance Podcast. We really do appreciate any support in getting this content out into the world. So thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you again next week.